For example, one of the greatest art forms ever created that's world renowned is blues music.
Oh yeah.
You can strip away the context and view it vacuously and say this is just a phenomenal guitar player playing in the minor pentatonic over a 3-chord progression, the 1, 4, and 5 repeatedly. Or you can look at the context and say Black Americans went through hell on earth, 400 years of slavery, and their peak musical creation that came out of that was blues and jazz. The pain that they went through produced this art form that spoke of heartbreak, that spoke of loneliness, alcoholism, divorce. That was what created blues. Now, I have to ask you, do you think we can get the blues by stripping away its historical context?
Can we separate art from the artist? What do you guys think about that?
Context matters. I think both. I think you can have both. There are artists that do great timepieces that reflect their day and age. And there's artists that focus primarily on the abstract. And one could say that can separate the artist from the art, but at the end of the day, it's still his fingerprint. You know what I mean? I'll say you can. I'll say you cannot. Ben. I'll say you cannot.
So you would say yes or no?
I'll just go ahead and say no. Let me just go ahead and say no. A definitive no.
What do you mean by separating art from the artist?
Well, I mean, you'll have artists who say or do, controversial things, right? Who will become notorious. Like maybe we discover, like R. Kelly, for instance, right? I mean, abuser, right? And can we still consume his music in good conscience, without
right? So like the expression that says, "Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater."
Right.
The same could be said with books and Christian leaders who, at one point, were spouting good theology, and then all of a sudden, you're like, "What the heck are you doing?" That makes sense. Like Rob Bell fell.
Like a Rob Bell, yeah.
Mark Driscoll brought me surprise. It's a gut punch. It's like, so do you separate the good that they were doing from the character? Maybe, yeah, but I feel like music is an expression of what the intent and heart of the artist. I think a lot of artists care about their music. They care deeply, and they're expressing themselves through music. Would you say that? So my argument would be, I think you've illustrated really well. Kendrick Lamar's music is a story that he's telling. So, how can you separate the story from the writer? Because the story doesn't exist without the writer.
I agree with that. Because even in the most abstract of art creations, it's still the artist's interpretation at the end of the day.
Yeah. So, I don't know. So would that be yes or no then, Osman? Can you or not?
I don't know. That's hard. Like, for instance, not saying that I'm a fan of this artist. I heard this line. She's very popular. Some call her a theologian. I don't. There was Ariana Grande had a line in her lyrics that really spoke to the glory of God. I don't even think she knew. And it said that the light has come to take back what the darkness has stolen. Like, that is a beautiful representation of what Christ is, that he has come to take back what the darkness, like, but she's not a Christian at all. But her line is very clear gospel message. And so I think sometimes I think artists are just, like I said, we worship a God that's called the creator. Like, he can speak through creation. Like, the two evidence of God's existence is both scripture and nature. And so in that sense, but at the same time, like, I would say no. You cannot separate. To answer your question, my answer would be no.
Okay.
Right. Can I add one more point too?
Yeah.
I think when it comes to like don't separate the baby from the bathwater, as long as there's a secular environment, I believe that to be true. But when you look at Christ, even Christ says that anything that was for him will last in the day, in the last days. Everything else will be burnt away. So not even Christ will retain good production, or you could say the fecundity of the artists, the writers of the day, the poets of the day. All of it will be burnt away in the last days, and only those things for Christ will last. So even him himself, he would answer your question by saying no. I believe that's just my interpretation as well.
Okay.
And I agree because I understand like some of the greatest artists of all time were some of the craziest people in their personal life. To me, Michael Jackson is the greatest of all time, and we know he's had a storied personal life, and I get it.
Yeah. Hey Chang, I have a question for you.
Oh.
Is it okay to listen to non-Christian artists?
I mean, if you look at what I listen to,
You know what Jay thinks about this.
most of the stuff I listen, like I got a lot of beef with, you know,
I agree with Chang. I
for
agree with
instance,
Chang.
CCM, contemporary Christian music, and Christian hip hop or rap. Don't get me wrong, there are talented, like gifted, you know, created artists like in those different mediums, but more often than not, I find myself just disappointed with just how like corny, how
Yeah.
inartistic, if that's even a word, you uncreative, maybe that's a better word, uncreative. Um, that we serve a the God of the universe, you know, the creator of all things. Why is there so much mediocrity? You know, like
Speaking,
why is there so much?
speaking though, that's true.
How about this?
That's
He's
true.
an infinite being, and we're finite beings, and trying to summarize his glory into a 4-minute song might be hard. As compared to us, from a human essence point of view, expressing how sinful we are and the pleasures that we get from our sin is a lot easier to write about than conveying the glory of God. Like a lot of rap music, which Chang, I love. And Tyler, I was a little bit hurt because what it sounded like earlier is you were implying that rap isn't music. That was a little hurtful. So I don't agree with you on that one. But it's easy. If you notice, a lot of rap artists is self-hype and self-glory, man.
True.
So, and that's what people love about it. It glorifies man. And so when you have music that glorifies God trying to fit in the same genre, it doesn't come off as well because it is off-putting for the most part because it's not about man.
I agree with Chang on that. I've played professionally in music for a couple of years, and that's always been my sentiment. I'll talk about it with some of my buddies. I'm like, why is it that when it's secular music, it's the peak of the art form? Like these are the masters of their craft instrumentally, um, artistically. And then when it comes to Christian music, it's like we're so scared to step out of the box and try something different. We don't want to use a new algorithm. We'll stick with the same old style. I don't know how many times we're going to hear somebody rhyme faith with grace. It gets so, it's just exhausting over time. But it was tough for me because as somebody who played music professionally, I'm like, for me to be the best that I can be, I had to study the secular artists, guys that don't believe in Christ, probably profess atheists at the end of the day. Most of them were, especially in rock music. But for me to be the best at my instrument, I emulated those guys. I studied those guys. I studied what they created, and I would sit there and I would learn from it, and then I would use that to create something of my own. And it's tough. You're very right. It's very hard. I don't want to create some kind of exception. Um, as adults, we understand we're strong enough in terms of mental capacity to think critically and understand how to digest this information. But when it's like the youth of America, I feel like that's a different discussion. When they're easily swayed by authority figures and their mind is still being molded. They don't even understand their own foundation yet. I believe that's when it becomes a problem. But I don't know, you guys might not agree, but what do you guys think?
I think it goes right back to the point of separating an artist from their art. And while you might say that no, you can't, you have to, right? If you're gonna continue to build yourself, you've got to be able to separate the person and what they've done from what they've said and who they are.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Because indeed we are doing that, right? When a tower builder looks to see how Eiffel built his tower, he's not looking at the quality of life of Eiffel. Or when an evangelist goes to see what Ravi Zacharias accomplished with his ministries, he's not going to inspect the character behind the scenes per se.
But I did. Like when I study these guys, I want to know, when you created this, mentally, what tools were you using? What experiences were you using? What was your worldview at that time? And you have to tap into that.
Yeah.
I can't separate that.
And I don't disagree with you, but
Yeah.
consuming that and digesting that is different than accepting that. And that's where it diverges, and that's where you've got to say that at some point when it goes in, it doesn't have to come out.
I'm following what you're saying, Tyler. I hear the point that you're making.
Yeah.
And correct if I'm wrong. Correct if I'm wrong. But if I can illustrate, so James, you say you look up to, these musicians, right?
Like
these
a Jimi Hendrix or something.
Yeah, like, just their incredible skill, right? Their ability. Now, what I'm understanding, the way I'm interpreting Tyler, is that by just honing in on the particular skill, the particular craft itself, even though these people may be atheists, agnostics, whatever, right? They don't profess Christ. You're still benefiting, right? You're still learning. You're still benefiting from this physical ability, this physical skill, this musical talent that they have. Aren't you, in that sense, separating that from their worldview in that way?
I don't think so. Because in order to learn how to create like them, you have to go into that. Like, listen, like Christ, when he went down to hell to receive the keys in the art form, I view it the same way. You guys step into their hell to retrieve the keys of what they were doing. So when it's Hendrix, I have to know what he was going through, what emotion, what experience tied together produce a kind of skill such as this. That's the mindset I have.
Because, so does that mean that you're smoking LSD?
Right?
Come on now.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's a fair point.
He's not going full method acting.
Right. More so like an observational scientist. I'm testing the waters. I'm seeing what chemicals we're gonna find in this sample and trying to see how I can reproduce it in a lab rather than through life experience. I'm reproducing it in a lab. I'm not going through life experience.
Okay, let me ask a follow-up question.
Yeah.
How are you pulling from his worldview though? Like, how is that influencing the skill, the talent? How is that influencing that?
No, that's a very good question, because, for example, one of the greatest art forms ever created that's world renowned is blues music.
Oh yeah.
You can strip away the context and view it vacuously and say, this is just a phenomenal guitar player playing in the minor pentatonic over a 3-chord progression, the 1, 4, and 5 repeatedly. Or you can look at the context and say, Black Americans went through hell on earth, 400 years of slavery, and their peak musical creation that came out of that was blues and jazz. The pain that they went through produced this art form that spoke of heartbreak, that spoke of loneliness, alcoholism, divorce. That was what created blues. Now, I have to ask you, do you think we can get the blues by stripping away its historical context?
No.
Right. So all the blues musicians today, including myself, we didn't go through slavery. I didn't go through Jim Crow. but the context provided what was necessary for me to tap into it. And now I understand why it was created and why the world tips their hat to the blues genre. It's like that was a necessary component. We don't have the blues without our American history.
True. That's a good point. That's a good point.
One of my favorite artists is BB King. And did you know that he started as a gospel musician and played at church? And then his friend invited him to play at a bar with him. And at the end of it, he got free beer and money. So he got paid and got free alcohol. And so he's like, I prefer that better than the claps at church. So he went to stop playing at church and started playing at the bars. And his ending well-known song is "The Thrill Is Gone." It's just that progression of started in the gospel and then went into man-fed glory and then wrote beautiful music that I love. And then at the end of it realizes there's the thrill is just gone. I don't have the same joy in this music that I did before. So I wish BB King would have written more. Would BB King be as great if he would have stayed in the Christian genre?
Mm. Right. But just to conclude, to Tyler, your point, like I said, like a scientist in the lab, I don't have to smoke LSD, but I have access to the ingredients to produce it in a controlled environment.
Separating it, right?
Well, not really. I'm still not necessarily separated.
Yes, you are. Hey, I want to take just a second here. I wasn't saying that hip hop is not music, all right? I was saying that rap.
Tyler, hip hop and rap are two different things, and you're now saying rap is music, but hip hop or hip hop is music, rap isn't.
Rap is not music. Neither are the lyrics of any, because they're words. That's what they are. They're prose, they're poetry, they're narrative.
Can acapella be music?
Ooh.
What happened to Chris?
Yes.
But those are just words.
No, they're not. They're
Why
pitch.
not?
They're pitch and rhythm.
You wait, hold on. Pitch and rhythm are the only two variables for what is considered music.
Yes. At its most basic components, that's what music is. Otherwise, it's a combination.
You're saying rap doesn't have a pitch nor rhythm.
I'm saying it's not intended. Well, the rhythm is there, but the pitch is not intended.
What is the definition of pitch then?
It's a frequency that's controlled within a specific confined scale. Most people
rap doesn't follow a confined scale.
Correct.
It does. It does.
It does.
No,
it does.
Oh, yeah, it does.
No, it doesn't.
You need hold on. What
even rap is in
exposure
key.
to
Even rap
music?
stays within a key.
Listen to Kendrick Lamar's music is not in key.
Well, are you using him as the only example of rap?
No. Anytime that someone's speaking, they're speaking and they're speaking without respect to any scale. And so you could say that it's atonal music, but it's not intended.
It is intended. That's what's musical about it. It's the tension from the original key and how they're using their voice to fluctuate around that. That's combined with the rhythm. That's what makes it brilliant.
The words themselves, not music. You can say that the sounds that are being made, if you take the lyrical meaning away from it, you can say that that's music. You can make that case. I can't argue against it.
Can you make a word without the sounds?
Yes, absolutely.
You can make. You can speak a word. You can speak word without sound.
Oh, no. I'm saying, well, right, because that's the division. That's the separation of lyric and music. So it doesn't matter if you're talking about Wonderwall or Metallica or, I don't care, Will Smith.
Oh, gosh.
I just gave you that one. I love
it. I'm going to have to disagree on that one, bro.
All right, that's fine.
Here's one question for Tyler then. What is your exposure to rap music?
Oh, I mean,
it's so diverse. There's different. So how you have different genres of metal and rock. Rap is a scale like that. There's so many different.
Hey, I agree.
So for you to make a distinctive rap isn't music, you're blanketing a whole category.
I'm making a statement that goes far beyond that. I'm saying that words are not music.
Words are not music.
Words are not music. Words are words.
Then
but
what do you mean words are not music?
You can't strip it down like that. That's
you
not
can.
How it works.
You have to separate it to find the formula.
Can be music. We
call
it
in poetry. A context is music. There's a context of stripping it of.
Is poetry not music?
Poetry is not music.
So the Psalms in the Bible are not considered music as well,
Can you observe them the way that they were originally given?
but they're considered songs.
Not in a classical definition of song.
You better talk to God then. Let him know, hey, these books hate songs.
That's literally the argument I was trying to make, and you walked right into it. Like, are you limiting? So words cannot be music. Can music exist? Music can exist without words. I would agree. Beethoven, Bach, Chopin love classical piano, classical music in that sense. Is music a compilation of notes and pitches and rhythm, or can music also be the experience you feel and are moved by, like the context of the phrase "music tamed the beast"?
No.
Because music can make you feel. Like when I listen,
Music does make you feel, but that's different. That's your response to the art. The art itself is you can boil it down to basic principles, that it's reproducible by these principles, and to combine it with other forms of art like visual art. Kendrick Lamar's his depiction of Christ, that's a visual art. It's not a visual art that I prefer to consume, but it's a visual art. Or lyric is the most common combination of music with visual art. Lyric itself is word. It applies a secondary art form and combines with music on its own. Not music. Lyric is not music.
then,
no matter if it's rap.
hold on. So then the beat, the drums, and the guitars sometimes that are used in rap music.
Totally, that's music. Yeah, absolutely.
And then the secondary is their lyrics.
Right. Well, and you don't have to say it's secondary, but just that it's been combined.
So Tyler,
so then a rap song would be
is rhythm music?
Rhythm on its own is only part of music.
But it is music.
But it's music.
It's an ingredient for music.
It's
so if I'm hold on. So if I'm just playing a drum set unaccompanied, it's no longer music because it's unaccompanied?
But hold on a second. If you're playing a drum set, there's more than one pitch.
Okay, I'm just playing the bongos. Just playing the bongos by itself.
Yet again, pitch.
Is it music? It's unaccompanied.
Yeah, it's dichotomous. It's within a restricted piece of scale, tonality.
Exactly. So the same thing you could do with the bongos, you could do vocally as well.
Sure. Then you can say that a fart is music.
Within context, yes.
And there are some people that probably could turn art into music.
Hey, listen, MJ was one of the first popular artists to use breath within his recordings. He would just exhale and it would take it to another level. He used breath rhythmically and he made it music. I can use spoons rhythmically, making music. Vocally, right. I could speak and make that music as well, unaccompanied.
Yes, but you don't say that turmeric is curry, or at least I don't. And yet I use it in curry. It's an ingredient.
So
it on itself is not the final product.
Yes, it can be. It can be though. If I was by myself rapping on an album with no instruments, rhythmically, that's music.
Rhythmically, you can say that it is absolutely rhythm.
And then if you're changing the pitch of your voice up and down while doing the rhythm, is that not considered then pitch and rhythm coming together?
Yeah, but the point that I made about it is that the words themselves are not.
So then does that also apply to country music? Then
yes.
Then rock music. That's just the vocal. All lyrics is no music.
Correct.
All right. Well, look.
Well, then in that case, that's fair because it seems like that's
said that
equalizing of all music.
Yeah.
It seemed like you were targeting only rap because
I said my statement is much further,
but rap isn't.
All right, let's transition then.
No, let's pick apart this rap idea a little more.
My father-in-law thinks that rap. He's like, you can't spell crap without rap. I'm like, no, rap. And then he watched Hamilton and loved it. I'm like, Hamilton is all rap for the most part. So
well, let's go ahead and transition then. I'll conclude by saying rap did surpass rock music for the most consumed musical art form on earth. So I'm happy for the future of hip hop. So
cool.
Peace.